Dad, baby.
This is Better Off Dad with Paul and Steve, and we're trying something new today. And my computer will probably crash 3 or 4 times while we're trying it because technology hates me.
That's right.
Well, we're going to try to do a react video. So the video we're going to react to is by the channel Penguin Zero. I've heard it pronounced different ways, but the dude's name is Charlie. He's awesome. But he's talking about The Last of Us. Keep in mind, he's only seen the first episode. He's also a gamer.
Yeah, big time.
So he played the game. And if you go back into his channel, you'll see he did a lot of live gameplay. So he knows from whence he talks, or from whence he comes. He knows what he's talking about, what I'm trying to say. So, hope you enjoy it. Let's give it a try.
Yeah, I'm happy to say they finally done it. They
Yeah, we're
finally not ruined an IP with a terrible adaptation. At least not yet. We're only 1 episode in, but I'm already twirling my shirt over my head right now because the first episode of The Last of Us show wasn't unwatchably, insufferably horrible like most adaptations are these days. It was actually good. Finally.
So the thing is, he played the game, so he knew.
Yeah.
Right? He knew that the girl was, spoiler alert, he knew the little girl was going to die.
Yeah.
We've got another adaptation that is faithful to the source material and also not an absolute stinky pile of garbage. Again, we're only 1 episode deep, so there's still plenty of time for them to fly off the rails and ruin it. Maybe in episode 2 they start introducing aliens, episode 3 they bring in ghosts. Like they could fully tank this show, but right now episode 1 is absolutely fantastic. And this has been kind of a roller coaster for me because when the first trailer dropped, I was cautiously optimistic that it'd be good. But then the more the showrunner spoke, the less confident I became. They did the worst PR run for this show I could have imagined. The showrunner would say things like, "Oh, dying in The Last of Us game is just pixels on a screen. It's going to be so much different in the show," and like kind of belittling the property, like the source material, for no reason.
So I could see why that would have bummed him out, because it basically, the showrunner, I don't know, I guess our audience is pretty smart. They know what that is. It's kind of the person that broad strokes lays out how the show is going to go, right?
Right.
And if they're already like, with a game, it's just pixels on a screen. You know, with a movie, it's more real. Like, you already know they're probably not a big gamer, right?
Yeah. Well, it also, he's not wrong. It also came out of nowhere to just the general public. Because I just remember seeing the tile on the TV and not really paying attention to it until then suddenly everybody started talking about it. It's like, how did I miss, as tuned in as I am to what's going on, how the hell did I miss anything about this?
So you knew about the game before, right?
Yeah.
I didn't know. I
have
never
gamer
heard of
friends and family.
Okay. Gotcha.
And then they'd also celebrate the fact that they instructed their talent to not play the games for some reason.
They used to do that when we would do when I used to do theater, like community theater and stuff, and in school we'd do plays. They would, like, if it was like we're doing Grease or Anything Goes, it's like they would say, don't go watch any videos of, don't go watch the movie. We did A Few Good Men, and they're like, if you haven't already seen it, don't go see it, because I don't know, there's this artistic, like, we want your authentic you. We don't want you trying to copy what they did in the game,
I get it, though.
Just a lot of things they'd say that made me scratch my head and go, I still don't get that Galaxy Brain strategy, this like chess master's PR move where like the way to get people hype is by letting people know that they didn't play the games. I don't get it. Like, hey, Last of Us fans, we made sure none of our talent played the games. Hoorah! It just doesn't make sense to me. But regardless, despite all of that, they pulled it together and made an absolutely spectacular episode 1. And it's so refreshing because you may remember, in the Bible, there was that period where the Lord flooded the earth. Well, we've right now entered that age again, but instead of flooding the earth with water, he's flooded the earth with absolutely dog shit adaptations from other IPs that are beloved. So we've had
Lo, I say unto you, If you don't turn from your wicked ways, I shall flood you with absolutely dog shit adaptations of IPs.
He's not wrong.
Things like the Halo show, the Resident Evil Netflix show, Witcher Blood Origin, Velma, like it just doesn't stop. And now we have a new adaptation that's not shit. Like it, the flood may be over. Maybe we're finally going to get to an era where adaptations are faithfully done. And it's not like this is the only one. There have been some great ones recently, like Arcane as well as Cyberpunk Edge Runner. But the point is, this one's great, and I'm happy about it. I've said from the beginning it'd be very hard to fuck up a Last of Us show if you just follow the game one to one. And for the most part, they do follow it pretty one to one in certain cases, but they add a lot of their own elements to the show, so it's not just a carbon copy of the game. And I actually really liked a lot of what they put into this. It wasn't just like ham-fisted, useless details that don't matter. They really crafted quite a bit to flesh out the universe pre-breakout. Like they build the world around it pretty well. Like they give context of like the fungus and stuff where it goes back to an old interview going over things. They then also transition into showing the relationship between Joel and Sarah more. In the game, it's an iconic intro, and I still think the intro is the best that gaming has to offer. The Last of Us intro is a masterpiece, and the show does a fucking amazing job of capturing that and also bringing you to it. In the game, it gets very quickly to the truck, going through the city and all the chaos and all that. It takes you into the action pretty quickly because it's a game and they don't want the player to get bored or start to lose interest. Usually, when a game's really heavy handed on cutscenes, some people like to whine and complain, like, oh, this shit is just watching a movie. It's just an interactive movie, not a game. Boo, throwing tomatoes. So the game quickly gets you to like the action parts to get the player hooked and interested.
So it's true. I actually went back and watched. I was like, what is this game all about? Everybody's talking about the game. So I
Uh-huh.
went and to YouTube to see if I could find, you know, somebody playing the game.
Mm-hmm.
And I found full, uh, like from end to end, like a 12-hour video
Yeah.
of
Yeah.
somebody playing the entire game, right?
Yeah.
And I watched that intro and I was like, holy crap, they just lifted it right from the game.
Yeah. Well, don't go too deep into that because there's a lot of shit that happens between where we are and where it goes. So
Yeah,
the other thing is, I got to point out, he's 100% correct on Arcane.
yeah,
Check
that's a good one.
your kids have probably watched it, but it doesn't have to be as good as it is.
It's a good, so that's based on a game as
Yes.
well. All
Yeah.
right. Yeah. So anyway, I was thinking the game version of the intro I actually liked better. Like
Okay.
Charlie seems to like the show one better because it went deeper, but with the game one, they didn't like yes, they focused on the little girl, but there was just as much focus on Joel.
Mm-hmm.
And so I kind of got, although who's to say because I already knew where they were going. So in the game, I was like, okay, so they didn't I don't, it's impossible to know because
Yeah.
I already knew, right? The added benefit of this week's episode is you don't have to look at me. I'm not as good looking as Charlie. I have a face made for podcasting. Um, so with the game, I felt like they didn't. I like it was more a focus of yes, we want you to know this is a deep, meaningful relationship, but
Yeah.
we're not going to try to trick you into thinking she's going to be the main character. That's
Well, yeah, you did suffer from that because you didn't know, coming into it. I sort of knew, so.
yeah.
Well, the show has the benefit of not needing to worry about that kind of bitching, so it actually spends a good chunk of time just showcasing Sarah and Joel's relationship as well as focusing on things that Sarah was doing right before the breakout happened. And I think that really adds to the overall
Not a sponsor.
like greatness of that iconic intro because the show, I am so happy to say, follows that intro really well. It puts the camera in the truck just like in the games as they're driving through, all kinds of like fucking wild shit's happening around them, people getting blown up, eaten, things going to shit everywhere, and it's capturing that insanity, that madness, all from the perspective of inside the truck. And it is fucking great. I'm super happy they didn't try and get like stupid with it and try and make it something different. Like I'm glad they just took what the game did and made that magic happen again in the
Yeah, when I watched the game thing, I was like, holy crap. It really is
Yeah.
exactly they just
And
reshot the shot using people instead of the game.
and there are so many scenes in these episodes that you're like, that's the video game. That's the
Yeah.
video game.
Oh, and yeah, spoiler alert, episode 4, or 5, episode 5,
Yeah, 5.
spoiler alert. Yeah, when he's up there doing the sniper thing,
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, I went and looked it up and I was like, oh yeah, that happens in the game.
Yeah.
I guess that's not really a spoiler because you don't know where or why or
Yeah.
whatever. So, but anyway,
show's format. I think they did a really great job with the intro. I have legitimately zero complaints about how all of that played out. That was one of the big things I was worried about. Like, how can you possibly recreate that scene in a show and do it even nearly as well as the game? But they did. I'd say it's on par with the game's intro for sure. Now, there was one other major change that they announced they'd be making in the show that is very different in the game. And a lot of people were pretty upset about it, but I was pretty indifferent. And now seeing it in the show, I do think the change is fine. That was their decision to remove spores entirely. If you played the game, you know the role spores play. In the show, they're not using spores. Now they're using like these little tendrils, like these little feely finger things that pop out of their mouth and they transmit the infection to each other like that. But it's not spores anymore. And I don't really care. It doesn't change things drastically, in my opinion, to have it be little fucking wieners popping out of their mouth, like tickling people for the infection, versus
leaders
it being the spores.
more like
I
spaghetti.
didn't care too much when I heard that, but I know a lot of people were upset. After seeing in episode 1 here, even though it didn't play a major role yet, I can see that it's not going to be something super huge. At least I don't think it will. I don't think the decision to change from spores to tendrils is necessarily going to be that big of an issue that's going to cause problems for the narrative. So I'm not bothered by it, but I do fully understand people that are. In the game, spores, they get airborne, so you'd have to wear the masks in order to protect yourselves. Well, since there's no longer spores in the show, you don't really need to worry about that. So there's not a ton of like mask up moments kind of thing. And to me, that doesn't bother me too much, but it does make it much more like a normal zombie show where the only way to get the infection is through getting, groped by the mouth tendrils stuffed. Like I do get it. I understand that the airborne spores in the game make it a little more unique from just standard zombie schlock.
Yeah, I'm not sure if he's going to get to this, but this thing was made in 2013, the game, right?
Hmm.
And the game was made in a world that had not had an airborne pandemic.
There is that.
The
I
game
think
was made at a time when we all weren't having to wear masks everywhere,
yeah.
you know.
I also think that a little bit of that has to do with FaceTime for the actors.
Yeah, I mean, if everybody's wearing a mask,
Yeah.
you know, you just how do you relate to a character when everybody looks the same
Yep.
because they all have masks on, right? So it's a good point.
But in the show, I just don't see what that would have added to even bother with it because you just put on a mask and all of a sudden everything's back to normal, right? So,
Yeah,
I'm sure they could have played around with
2020.
it, but let's think about it in the game's way. Like in the game, it wasn't necessarily about like, oh, avoiding the infection because the spores are everywhere. It was really just all about the characters and their relationship and going through this fucking brutal world. So I feel like it just doesn't change a whole lot to just take the spores out and make it more about like direct transmission contact in the show. Now maybe it gets bad later on, like maybe this does have a huge detrimental effect on the story going forward. I don't see that happening, but I do think it is possible. We're still obviously very early here, but right now I'm not bothered by that change. Overall, I just feel like they've done an outstanding job adapting this property and also adding to it. The extra stuff they put in here that wasn't present in the game doesn't feel like extra stuff. It feels very good. It feels very at home in the universe. Like it fleshes out the story even more. It adds to it. So I think
And keep in mind, he has only seen episode 1 at this point.
Yeah.
He hasn't even seen 3 or 4 or 5, you know,
Right.
which is like all the like he said, maybe it will go bad. I don't think it will go bad. It's like I want to see his reaction after, I want to see a more recent reaction
Right.
from
Right.
him to see if he agrees because I think he's going to be like, yeah, this all really worked.
Yeah.
It worked really well.
Most of my gamer friends have like zero complaints about the adaptation.
Yeah.
they've just done a really great job so far. They've also added a couple new characters. Don't know exactly the size role they're going to play in the story going forward. I also hope that this serves as an example to all the major studios out there that keep just eating up IP like fucking Galactus and then just wiping their ass with it, producing some of the worst adaptations imaginable. I hope they'll look at this and the success of The Last of Us show, at least episode
He's
1,
pointing at The
and
Last
see
of
that the
Us.
reward is far greater if you just put in actual effort to adapt the properties the way they should be, faithful to the source material, and even bring on the people responsible for its creation in the first place. Neil Druckmann is clearly on board for this show, and it is very obvious. What should have been a no-brainer to absolutely everybody has apparently become super rare. You shouldn't be giving your IP to people that don't know anything about it and actively fucking dislike it, like with the Halo TV show. I'm hopeful that the
Unless you're talking about Robert Heinlein's Starship Troopers, in which case you want to give it to people who hate it.
Yes, yes.
Last of Us show will continue to be this good. Hopefully, it even only gets better from this point forward. I'm actually very excited to see more of it. So, just wanted to talk about this because what a nice, pleasant surprise. A breath of fresh air with a great video game adaptation. That's about it. So, yeah.
If you're listening to this, sorry, you're gonna have to watch it.
Yeah.
The thing too that I was gonna point out real quick was one of the problems that happens when IPs get bought and produced is writers write and producers think they can write. They'll
Yeah.
literally just shit all over everything that you put in front of them because they know better. That's why they bought it, because they know better.
Yeah, exactly. I like, I've been using, since I'm not a gamer,
Mhm.
I don't play video games
Same.
or know very many people who do. One of the things I keep catching myself doing is going, well, why just reproduce exactly what the game had? I don't get it. Make it based on, and then I'm like, wait a minute, that's not my normal position on these things. Like
Yeah.
books, for example. Loved Peter Jackson's Lord of the Rings trilogy because he was so faithful to the book, right? To the books. Hated, well, I thought World War Z was an okay, no-brainer movie, but it absolutely was not at all faithful to the book.
Yeah.
And that made me mad,
They
right?
just wanted that name.
Yeah, exactly.
They
Brad
took that
Pitt.
name, they slapped a pretty face on it that would sell tickets, and Walking Dead and all zombies are always a big deal, so it
Yeah,
was easy money.
right. And so I'm comparing that to games now, and I'm like, okay, if I think about how I would like movies to be adapted from books, then I guess that gamers probably feel the same way. It's like, if I'm going to watch the
Yeah.
movie, I want it to be faithful to the game. And you can still do things like episode 3. You could still do things
Yeah.
where you go, okay, let's take a character, which I read a lot of gamers, suspected, that, spoiler alert, that Bill was probably gay. Like, it was never explicitly stated, but, and so it's not like they made something up.
Yeah.
And they were able to flesh out the world even more and
Yeah.
just build, and it really reflects the characters,
Yeah.
Joel and Ellie. Like, it really rounds out their characters.
Yeah.
Uh,
I mean,
to have that
they took a
episode.
lot of liberties, though. They took a lot of liberties with the two characters from the flashback from episode 3. They took a lot of characters and had a lot of liberties with episode 3, but you wouldn't have wanted to watch. Okay, had they gone the route that the game went with episode 3, we would not be talking about it. But
Yeah.
the way they presented it and how they presented it and what they presented got every freaking body talking about it.
Yeah. So enough about The Last of Us. Just to, if you're listening on the pod, you probably don't have to go watch the video. Feel free to go watch the video. But Charlie doesn't really have any visuals or anything. Charlie's just
not typically, no.
It's just basically the video was him talking, dude with a beard and long hair talking. So you don't have to go watch it, but feel free to do it if you do. If you are watching on the video, please leave a comment, good or bad. You hated it. Tell us you
if
hated
you like
it.
us doing this, we'll do more. Just let us
Yeah.
know.
I guess go watch The Last of Us. I guess also go watch Arcane.
Yeah, it's good. The animation for that goes way beyond what it needs to. You
What does
should
this have
ask
to
your
do?
kids if they've watched it.
What does this have to do with parenting? It's ask your kids if they watched it. And I've been
Yes.
watching with my kids. So there
Yeah.
you go. Everything we talk about has to do with parenting because you know why? We're better off dad, Paul and Steve. Just trying to do the right thing when things are hard. And it shouldn't be this hard.